Hello and welcome everybody to day 5 of the Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge with me, Sam Peterson. And we are already through almost a full week of challenges. We're on challenge 5. Super excited for this one. If you guys do want to join these challenges, they're 2 weeks long, so we're almost halfway through them already. And they'll be going on next week as well. I do want to give everyone a reminder that next week we will be starting on Tuesday. There is no DCC challenge on Monday because it's a holiday. So I'll see you all on Tuesday. Now, if you do want to join these challenges, you can head over to the landing page at behance.net/challenge/Photoshop, and it looks like this. So if you go there, you'll see this big blue button at the top, and it'll say, "Hi, take the challenge." You can click that to register, get notifications when we're live, when there's new challenges. And if you scroll down, you'll see all the challenges that we've done and that we're going to be doing. Each day a new one is released, and you'll see that the next challenge is June 1st, which is Tuesday. So we've gone through all these, and if you want to see the replays or anything, you can click watch video and you can click get started to get the starter file. Super excited for today's challenge. It is the drawing and painting challenge, which is add color to an illustrated line drawing, use selection tools, brushes, clipping masks to achieve greater detail. So as some of you may know, I do a lot of painting, drawing, and illustration. That's primarily the type of work that I do. And I wanted to take today's challenge to kind of give you a little introduction into how you can colorize a line drawing. I think drawing and painting is something that intimidates a lot of people, and it certainly takes a good amount of time to build up that skill. But I think coloring drawings in Photoshop is actually really accessible even with just a mouse. A tablet is very helpful. A tablet will aid you, especially if you're going to be doing any sort of freehand line drawing. But for coloring, you can just use selection tools and the tools within Photoshop with a mouse, and it works just fine. So I wanted to hopefully make this topic that can be sometimes intimidating a little bit more accessible to everybody. Before we jump into that, I do want to talk about the Discord real quick. And we have a community Discord. This is where you can post all your challenges. You can share, you can get feedback, you can give feedback. You can ask questions. There's an ask questions section right here under advice. The challenge section under feedback is where you'll primarily be posting your current challenges. We got a lot of awesome challenges. I'm super excited every day after we do a challenge to see everyone's entries for these. Hopefully we can jump into this Hopefully we can jump into this a little at the end of the stream. And then Valdair is one of the mentors. Ted is mentoring this one as well. A lot of great feedback from them. A lot of great challenges. So anyway, a lot to cover today. So let's jump into it in Photoshop. This is what we're looking at. I highly recommend you guys download the starter file for this particular challenge just because I've prepped everything. I made it a lot easier. You're totally welcome to draw your own and set it up and color it how you want to, but it can be pretty time consuming. I mean, just drawing something alone takes a good while. So I set up these files in a way that is hopefully pretty easy to follow. So there's 2 characters that I drew, and you can color either one you want. And of course, you can do your own too. These are the 2 characters. Kind of this Viking girl and I don't know, this martial arts looking guy. I didn't really have a clear idea of what they were, but I thought it'd be fun to give you guys a little choice on which one you wanted to work with. Now you'll notice on each file, if you go to character 1 and character 2 in the starter file, you'll notice there's a mask because we're using clipping masks for this. There's a selection layer which is clipped to that mask, and this is solely so you can grab sections with the magic wand tool. You can see when I click these, it grabs that color. You can click contiguous at the top if you don't want it to select all of that color, but the shoulder pad, for example, is the same shade of red. If you have contiguous unchecked and you select that area, it'll select everything of that color. So that can make it easy if you're wanting to select the same materials. So that's why they're crazy colors. It just makes them stand out. This is not the colors we'll be using, but it makes grabbing these different sections of color very quick and easy. And we're going to be using that a lot. And then of course you'll have the line layer. You see the line layer here. That's what it looks like without lines. But those are the 3 layers you're going to be encountering: the mask, selections, and the lines. And that's the starter file. We're going to be adding more layers, of course. So I'm going to leave, I always leave the selections off because you can still go on the selections layer with the magic wand tool and click those areas and it'll still grab them even if it's not visible. So this is what we're going to be doing throughout the challenge. So let's go to the other character. I thought this would be a fun one to do on stream. And she has the same layers. There's her selections, her lines. That's what the mask looks like by itself. So essentially all I did was I did the line drawing and I traced underneath it with, you can do it with a lasso tool, selection tools, or you can just kind of color it in, but that's what we have. So first and foremost, flat colors. Now I'm gonna kind of do the whole Martha Stewart thing where I show you guys a step and then I turn on the layers where it's completed. Because this is a fairly time-consuming process just because you have to repeat the same thing over and over, but the steps themselves are pretty simple. There's not a lot involved, it's just repeating it multiple times. So I want to get through all the little bits and techniques, so I'll be showing you a little bit of each technique and then moving on with the finished layer for that. So I want to kind of show you how to create something that looks a little bit like this. This is kind of the goal, this is kind of what we're shooting for, just to show you what it might look like after the fact, and that's what we're aiming for at this point. So let's start. I have this selections layer. I'm going to keep it off and I'm going to do Control-Shift-N or Command-Shift-N and do a new layer. I'm going to call this flat colors. And now you can basically go down, select the selections, and this is a repeated step you're going to do over and over. Go to the selections with the magic wand tool, which is hotkey W. Click a section you want. So her shirt. I am then going to press G to get the paint bucket. Go back to my flat colors, and if I want to, I can do Control H to hide the selection. I don't always want the selections there. And you can choose any color you want. So this is kind of the challenge. You can go ahead and colorize this any way you want. Pick whatever colors you think are cool. My advice in terms of color is to not go too saturated. It's easy to go like neon really quick. I like to keep it a little bit more subdued and try to go with the biggest areas of color first. So her vest is going to be kind of a big section. Of course, her skin, that's going to be a big section of color. So I like to get the areas of color I know what they're going to be when I'm designing. Maybe she has like leather on her skirt here, and I know that's leather. That's easy. It's a dark brown. Maybe it's kind of a yellow brown. Any kind of givens I like to get pretty quickly off the bat. So she could be the Hulk. Oh yeah, make sure to clip your new layers to that same mask. So just right click any new layer you make, create clipping mask. Oh, also hello to everyone. I don't even think I said hey. I see Paco in the chat, Jennifer, Kirsty, Paula, Sean, Steve, Ted, Marsha. I saw Cody Bear, Umacorn, Bruce, Simi. Man, everyone's here. What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining in. Sorry, I didn't greet you guys. Tani, good to see you. Welcome on in, everybody. So, I'm not feeling the Hulk. You can kind of do whatever you want though. And if it needs tweaking, like if this looks a little too orange, you can always ease off the saturation. Skin tones typically are in that orange range, so you can go a little bit more yellow or a little bit more red. You can go lighter or darker, you can just kind of play around with these. And this is what is nice about these selections, is you can just change this after the fact. Maybe her hair, I'll go back down to the selections layer, press W for my magic wand, click the hair, click G for the fill bucket tool, go back to my flat colors, and then fill it in. So there's a little bit of a kind of rhythm you'll get into with those hotkeys to go back and forth with this. And there's many ways to do this. This is how I do it. You can do blue hair, whatever you guys want. But my goal, my advice to you is to start simple. Start with a simple color scheme, 2 to 3 colors, get the main areas figured out, and then go from there. Because if you try to like fill in everything as a different color, or you do all the details first, it's going to be hard to get some nice harmony in there. Maybe like all this is leather. Go back to my selections layer, grab it with the magic wand tool, go back to my flat colors layer, G for fill bucket, fill it in. That's kind of the process. So I actually have some flat colors worked up. I'm going to go ahead and use those just to save time. Hopefully that step makes sense to everyone. Hopefully that's accessible. So these are my flat colors that I liked. And you can see for my color scheme, blue is kind of the prominent color in this one. There's a lot of browns and earth tones because she's kind of got this like, I don't know, almost like Viking or barbarian looking color scheme to her. So lots of browns, lots of this fur trim. And I thought the blue and the orange of the hair were kind of a nice little pop of color. And of course the red on the axe. And of course, if anyone has questions, let me know. Yeah. So the setting up the selections, just to respond to Bruce, it's time consuming. I mean, of course, drawing it is time consuming, setting up the selections. And I will say I didn't set up the selections perfectly. So if anyone encounters that, here's what I mean. If I click on the selections layer, again, it doesn't need to be visible. I have it toggled off. And I right click the shoulder pad. I'm sorry, left click the shoulder pad. Click the shoulder pad. You'll see some sections aren't getting selected because I didn't do the perfect job on the selections and I missed some areas. So if you encounter an area where the whole object doesn't get selected, just hold on shift for add selection and click again on the spot that wasn't selected. I know that happened on, it's happened on a few sections, I forget. I think this is one. You can see it's not selected there. So just shift select and you'll grab the rest of it. So this is the big part of it. We have the colors, that's easy, right? That's pretty self-explanatory. I'm gonna name this layer flat colors. And now is the shadows. So I'm gonna make a multiply layer, and I do this with multiply layers. You can, like I said, you can do shadows with exposure layers too, but I've always used multiply, and it's worked pretty well for me. I'm gonna go a little bit above 50% darkness, and I'm gonna choose a bluish red. So bluish red, it kind of makes for a cool shadow because of the blue, but the red usually tends to look pretty good on skin. I'm going to use this inking brush that's a hard round brush, as you can see. And I'm going to clip this shadow, this multiply layer, to my mask along with all the others. And now I have shadows that can't go outside the boundaries, and it's perfect. Now you can use different brushes. You can use different smoothing here at the top. But essentially, you just want to pick a kind of lighting scheme and try to be consistent with that. So is the light coming from the top left? Well, then maybe she's going to be shaded on her right side. Also, if you go too saturated with this, it may look too purple too soon. If it looks kind of weird on the skin, sometimes I like to crank up the redness. I try to find a color that looks good on all the colors, right? And I think that actually looks like a pretty good shadow. So I'm going to do Control A, delete, Control D to undo my selection, and we get back to brushing. So you can make the light come from the top right. You can go like this. And just try to think where on these objects would the light land. Maybe her chin would cast a little bit of a shadow, be shadow under her hair here. Her arm would probably have a shadow under it. I think all this fabric here might be in shadow. Now this is where selections come in handy again. Go to the selections layer, W for magic wand, click the selection, shift click it to get all of it, go back to our multiply layer, and I can just color it in. I don't have to be like careful about going out of the lines. Maybe underneath here, the left side of her body, you know, since it's coming from the top right. Maybe in shadow. Maybe like the shoulder pad would cast just a little bit of shadow here. And you can just kind of have fun with it, you know, wherever you think the light might hit. If you need reference, you know, like how light actually falls on someone's face, totally do that. But this is a process that you just go through. And maybe like the edge of her hair, the left side of her legs. Just gonna drag it here, and I'm doing all this with the mouse. Typically, I would do it with my my Wacom tablet, but this whole process is definitely doable with the mouse. I'm gonna go back to my selections, click on her legs, Control H to hide the selections, B for brush, go back to my multiply layer, and this way, if I want to add a shadow on the legs from the skirt, I don't have to worry about painting over the skirt. So you can use those selections at any point to control exactly where you're painting, which can make life, I think, a lot easier. All right, so we're already good amount through this stream, so I gotta jump over to the next step. I'm gonna copy that layer that I had previously, and this is what the multiply layer looks like without a clipping mask, not set to multiply. So you can see it's kind of that purple color. We'll clip it, set it back to multiply, and that's my flat colors and my main light source. So after the main light source, I'm going to do Control Shift N to make a new layer, and I'm going to do color dodge. I like to do color dodge for lighting. So for general lighting, I try to pick a pretty dark color, very desaturated. You can see how far down we are. And I do like a warm light. You can do a cool light if you want like moonlight or anything like that. But I'm going to pick a airbrush, just a soft round brush. Control A and then delete to get rid of that and see how that looks. So I'm going to clip that to my clipping mask along with all the others. And from here, you can kind of brighten up the area. I'm just clicking a little bit. You can do a lower opacity. I'm just kind of clicking on the area I think the light would be hitting, like the top of her chest, maybe the skirt area a little bit, but definitely her face, her hair. See, it gives it a little boost. You could even kind of crank up, you know, get a little shine on the axe if you just click repeatedly. Color dodge is great for like shines like that. So you can kind of go crazy if you want, but I usually keep it pretty dark as long as I'm trying to be subtle. Oh, another thing with the flat colors, you can make a layer on top of that. Sometimes I just do a gradient layer. And I can add a little variation to the skin tone. So let me get rid of those. But maybe you want to take the skin tone and just add like a little life to the skin. So sometimes I like to put a little bit more red, like in the knees, the toes, the nose, the cheeks. So this is on a separate layer than the flat colors. And, you know, the fingertips. So sometimes I'll make a secondary color layer. And then everything sits on that. The multiply layer will sit on that just fine. The color dodge will sit on top of all those layers just fine. They all stack on top of each other in a way that makes it really easy to go back and edit things after the fact. So I can always go back and edit my shadows. I can edit my colors at any point. We can always go back to these flat colors and change this blue, which already has shading on it, to red if we want. There's nothing stopping that. See how the lighting is still there? Of course, that's the most saturated color ever, but you know, you can play around and the lighting stays. So it's very convenient, very forgiving. And let's go on to a next step. So we have the color dodge for the general lighting. I like to add, I should name these layers, color dodge. This is because it gets really easy to lose this otherwise. This is multiply, or you can put shadow. Let's do a multiply gradient. I'll just put multiply G. And this is kind of what we just did with the color dodge, except I'm going to be doing it with the same shadow tone we picked before, kind of not too dark. Get our opacity down. I'll turn that up a bit. Oh, and I have to do Control D to deselect that shirt. Now we got everywhere. Right click that mask to create clipping mask. And I'll just do this big airbrush. Anywhere I want to add some shadow, I usually do it near the feet. I don't like having the feet be super contrasty. Maybe on the stomach a little bit. And I'll just add a little bit gradient of a shadow near the bottom specifically to let the top pop a little bit more. You can always go back to that color dodge layer. Play around. Like that little boost. I like that, but I'm going to turn the opacity down a lot. There. It's pretty good. See, we already have some pretty nice depth going on, I think, with the multiply. Here's a little trick. I'll do this real quick. I want to fit a couple other little tips in. These are the main tips, by the way, the main things you would be using to color it. But I want to fit in some cool tricks. Lighten layer. I like using this on occasion. Flip that to my mask. The blending mode, Lighten. Now, if you select the skin tone and then go a little bit darker and a little bit more red, you can give the core shadows some life. Let me try to go a little bit more opacity on my brush so you can see this effect. And you might see that it's only brightening up the core shadow with that red. I find that this gives skin a lot more life. Sometimes you see this warmth in core shadows, but it's only affecting the shadow because it's a lighten layer, so it's only lightening. But since this is darker than the skin tone, you're not going to see that. Now on the legs, it's a little bit different. I would probably have to select the local color again, go darker, and then more red. And I also feel like it gives the shadows a little bit more of a realistic look. So just a tool you can use if you want to use it. I like it personally. What else did I want to talk about before we go? Ambient occlusion. Now this is one that's more of an advanced technique, but I wanted to tell it to you guys because you can get this sort of cell shaded look. By the way, this is what it looks like without the lines on. See how the separate selections of color, the shadow, and all the other techniques we used, it already makes this read quite well without line work. We don't really need line work because the values and colors are so well separated to begin with. So ambient occlusion is more of an advanced technique. I would Google the term for 2D digital painting if you want, but I want to show you it a little bit. Now, the reason I want to show it to you is because I'll just do AO for ambient occlusion, and this is a shadow layer. Like the previous ones, we used a multiply layer. So it's just another shadow layer. The reason that I think this is so cool is because you can shade an entire character to look three-dimensional without a tablet. You don't need to paint it in, you know, and have all this finesse. You can do it all with a mouse, and you can get it to look very convincingly 3D. I'll show you what I mean. I'm gonna make a new layer, and it's just, I'll call it blank. It's just all placeholder. I'm gonna do like a dark tone like that. Flip that on, and you'll see what I mean here. So now all the selections are still available, but I'm gonna make a multiply layer, and I'm gonna use a fairly dark shadow, just like the blue-red we were talking about. And essentially what you wanna do is anywhere two objects meet or sit on top of each other, you're gonna have what's called ambient occlusion, which is basically no light is able to bounce up into an area. There's very little space where light can get, so it's a very dark point. And this is typically, I'm hiding my selections by the way with Control H. I'm just gonna paint over where those shapes overlap. I'm not gonna do really like big gradients, just a little bit where it overlaps. And now I have this sleeve selected, so I can paint anywhere on the sleeve, maybe like even under the arm. Whoops, I have to clip my ambient occlusion layer to my mask. Let's try it on the arm. I'm gonna go back down to my selections layer, press W for my magic wand, click the selection I want, the arm. Go back up to my ambient occlusion layer, B for brush, Control H to hide. You can see how it's like repeated hotkeys and why hotkeys are a lifesaver. This process actually gets pretty intuitive once you do it quite a bit. And then you click that. And let me show you what it looks like without the lines. Now this is probably hard to see, but look up ambient occlusion, check it out, and I'll show you my more finished version here. This is the character that I did off stream because I knew each one of these layers takes quite a while. You can start to see that you can get a pretty interesting like sort of 3D look from this. And this is all with the mouse. You know, I've just clicked the shoulder pad here and then did a little bit of airbrush on the side. I selected the areas under the shoulder pad. You can select the shoulder pad and shade it, and then do Control Shift I to select everything that's not the shoulder pad to shade under it. So I do that a lot to save time. But you can get this 3D look pretty quickly, and the great thing is it stacks on all your other layers. So we take off this layer, and it's hard to see a bit, but I'm gonna click it on and off. But you can kind of see the depth that it adds. So an advanced tool, one more thing that I wanted to talk about is textures. You can use any of these selections that I provided to mask out textures. So this was one for the axe. I put a little metal texture on it. I just masked it out for that selection. Multiply, overlay, you know, you can play around with different blending modes. Whoops. Play around with different blending modes. This is vivid light. That's soft light, maybe that's a little bit more subtle. So you can put leather textures on the leather. You can go crazy and, you know, really do whatever you want. So hopefully this wasn't too much info. These are all just different techniques that I've used for this style of illustration, which is more like the cell shaded style. One last thing I want to say that I forgot is you can even use the smudge tool to, let's see, can I do this? Are we working? Oh, I must be selected. Well, I was gonna say you can use the smudge tool to soften shadows, but it's not working. And I don't know why. It's probably something obvious, but I'm not sure. So if you want like a more realistic look, not that hard at shadow, I use the smudge tool to soften and blur the edge of the shadows for a bit of a realistic look. And what else did I want to say? Yeah, if you guys want to share these, hopefully that made sense. Really, it's just the flat colors and the multiply layer for the main light source that I recommend you use. You can establish a lot of depth with just that, like we did when I was bringing this up. So hopefully that helps. Some techniques you can play around with. If you guys want to share, definitely join the Discord where people are sharing awesome work all the time. There's been some really great challenges for the hybrid animals. I've been love seeing that one. Some really cool effects with the painterly look too. People are getting great textures. We got Andre posting his there. So definitely post them. I'm going to be checking these out today. Really impressed with all the work you guys are doing. I hope you have fun with this challenge. I hope it wasn't too overwhelming, but I wanted to give you some tools to think about, to play with, and you know, maybe make this topic a little bit more accessible. It's really the same steps repeated over and over. So I will see you all on Monday. I mean, sorry, not Monday, Tuesday, because we do not have the DCCs on Monday. See you all Tuesday for the next challenge. Thanks so much for coming out. I do appreciate it. I'll see you all next time.